guys, welcome to another episode of the Retail Perch. And today is a unique episode. After a long time, Gary, it's just you and me.
That's right. That's right.
And we want to welcome people back. Of course, here at Retail Perch, we talk about retail, technology, emerging trends, opportunities, challenges. We talk to all kinds of people, as you guys know, and we appreciate your support and your continued listenership here. And today, Gary and I are going to talk about something interesting. A couple of weeks ago, we both had the opportunity to travel for the first time for an in-person event in Las Vegas for the GroceryShop and the NGA show. So we thought we'll talk about, our experiences, what happened to the show, our thoughts around the future of in-person events, and how retailers expect to find vendors in the future. So, Gary, we get this off.
Yeah, no, I think that's great because it was certainly felt like a unique experience again to be traveling and going to a trade show or a conference and being with a lot of other people.
Yeah, and obviously, I think there was a sense of, I think we put out a blog on our site about this, and there was excitement and nervousness, right? Excitement because we were finally seeing people back in the flesh. And I think there's a certain amount of Zoom fatigue everybody has about looking at people through square boxes on their screens. Yeah. And I think, nervousness, obviously, because Vegas, you didn't know how many people are going to be there and what kind of people, and are they going to follow protocol. But I was pleasantly surprised, Gary.
Both shows were following safety protocols, right? To, get your badge to gain admission, you either had to, show you had a vaccine or a negative COVID test within a couple of days of the show. And then, everyone wearing a mask, unless you were on stage speaking, which is the Las Vegas, I guess, regulation today.
Right. And, I thought they did a pretty good job. It was all pretty streamlined. There wasn't much confusion. And I think by and large, everybody really kind of stuck to the protocols.
They did. I mean, as you'd expect, through the casino, you'd see people, with or without a mask from time to time. But for the most part, no, I think people going to both those shows did a nice job.
Yeah, I think it was interesting. And you sat at any of the tables to play. The dealer refused to deal unless you had your mask on. So even if you were standing behind and watching, you had to wear your mask in order to deal. I mean, so except when you drank, so people always had a drink in their hands. So that was interesting.
One way or another, the casino's going to win.
Exactly, right. Well, the other interesting thing before we dive into actual show was I thought, given that GroceryShop and the NGA happened to overlap, and I'm sure that was purely accidental or coincidental. Yes. I'm sure there were a lot of Uber rides between Mandalay Bay and Paris.
Yeah, I know. I certainly contributed to numerous rides back and forth. Yes.
Yeah, I think the Uber economy must have had a slight boom because of people going back and forth. But Gary, your thoughts on the NGA show? Let's start there.
So, overall, I thought it was a good show. Given that they had originally tried to have it back in May, I think it was, and then rescheduled for September, which is why the overlap with GroceryShop, purely coincidental. All that being said, I thought it was a good show. The attendance was off at both shows, as you would expect. But there had to be at least 2,500 people, I bet, at the NGA show.
Yeah, and what I thought was interesting this time, I thought the tracks were much more powerful this time. I think they seem to have much more meaningful tracks, and I'm wondering if it's because, of what's happened here in the last 18 months, there's just a greater interest in handling the change that's coming and more interest in finding solutions so they can weather any future storms that come along.
Yes, so I agree with you. There was a lot more workshops and tracks, focused on pretty specific areas. I think in one sense, there was maybe almost too many workshops, from the perspective of looking into a number of them. There just weren't necessarily a lot of people in each one,
right?
Which, poses its own challenges, but absolutely agree with you. There was a significant interest in what's going on in tech, in innovation, and so on. And we didn't have to look beyond the event Cart did Sunday afternoon that you were part of. We had 400 plus people in that room. And I think that just speaks to the interest in retailers wanting to know what's going on, what's coming next, what do we do?
Right, right. Yeah, and I think it was similar at I think the tracks that I attended, even in the big ballroom, I think they were pretty decently attended. So there seemed to be a lot of interest. Of course, the show floor, I think, obviously didn't have the same kind of traffic one normally expects, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I guess so. The time I spent on the NGA show floor, I agree, didn't seem to have the traffic. A number of things you would expect, a number of e-commerce providers there and so on. But I didn't see necessarily a lot of what I guess I would think of as more exciting technology and innovation. And, maybe I've become jaded to some of that, but I just had that impression walking around.
yeah, I would tend to agree with that. And I wonder, if you think about the show like a store, you'd have to think, okay, there's an e-commerce component to the show, which is people want to be able to experience and get this information in a virtual fashion,
Yeah.
as opposed to having to showing up there. And I'm wondering if there's a kind of a hybrid form of these conferences that is on the cards, because there's always going to be some set of people who are hesitant to travel and want to be able to fit things into their schedule, and some people who want to meet people in person.
Yes. Yeah. No, I agree. And I think we will see more of that, some kind of hybrid, in-person virtual blend of maybe some of the different workshops or sessions being made available live online, for people that don't want to travel, in addition to the people that want to be there in person. And I think what may be driving that is not only, some number of people that don't want to travel, don't want to be around people, they're still worried or concerned, about COVID or whatever. But I think the other side of it is, and I've talked to a lot of people about this, I think a good number of people have done sort of a reset with their lives, their careers, everything coming through these past 18 months. And I know, I've had to do a couple business trips over the last few months. And, before the pandemic, as I was traveling every week, almost nonstop. And now, not having traveled, but having gone back to it a couple of times, I've been really struck by how much more productive I am if I'm back home, in the office, instead of sitting in airports and on airplanes and hotels and so on and so forth.
Completely agree. Completely.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'm really changing my view of travel I want to do going forward.
Yeah, and I wonder what that does for, I would love to get some feedback from retailers out there who are listening to see, how do you expect to go out and find new technologies? I mean, how do you expect to meet vendors and emerging trends if you can't necessarily go to as many events that you would have
Right.
normally do,
Right.
right? I think that's an interesting challenge, because you can sit and try to Google, but that takes a lot of time to do that, and get firsthand experience. There's nothing like seeing stuff. So I'm wondering if there's a interesting mix on the cards here, whether it's NGA or grocery shops, trying to think about how can we bring retailers and vendors and have industry level discussions in
Yes.
slightly different format.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think the answer to that is going to vary based upon sort of the size of the retailer, what part of the industry they're playing in, right? I think independent retailers will continue to look to their wholesalers, look to the dealers, the VARs that currently support them for new capabilities, solutions, et cetera. The big guys, their phone just rings off the hook anyway, with solutions reaching them. So I think the answer to that's going to be different.
Right, because isn't it true, Gary? I mean, places like the NGA is where even some of these independents meet other independents, and there's conversations that happen, and
Yeah.
referrals, and suggestions around technology solutions that they're implementing.
Yeah, and I think, as we recently participated in, share groups have become more important. I think they were always important for those retailers that really understood how to best use them and participate in them and get value from them. But I think share groups are becoming an increasingly important way for retailers of all sizes to understand new solution providers, new capabilities, how to understand and look at and use new technologies.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, all said and done, with all the uncertainty and everything that happened, I think the NGA did a fantastic job in pulling
Yeah.
off the event, no question about it. So, definitely kudos to them. And, all the retailers that did show up, because, the vendors who committed to participate obviously were going to be there because they were going to man their booths. So, a number of retailers did show up, and, we got to meet some of our clients and, spoke to them.
Yeah.
And finally, some of them we met for the very first time.
Yeah.
We realized how tall or how short they were. Finally, had their Zoom boxes.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, it was an interesting challenge walking the hallways and trying to figure out if you know the person because they had a mask on, and so
That's right. I think I know that person, but I'm not sure.
that's yeah. So I just defaulted to saying hi to everybody.
Yes. Well, and I think, before we leave NGA, move on to Grocery Shop, the next NGA show is scheduled in like 6 months from now, the end of February.
Yeah.
So that's going to be here quick. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that, right? Is attendance going to be impacted because there was just a show a couple of weeks ago, and it'll only be 6 months to the next one. I'm sure a lot of it's going to have to do with the state of the world at that time. Will things be even more opened up or shut down?
Right. Yeah, I'm wondering if there's a case for, I'm just throwing this out there, a video wall, right? Where you do these presentations, you have a live audience and you have a video wall in the back of the room, and there's a bunch of people zoomed in or dialed into the event and who are attending a session, and you can actually interact with these people. So, I mean, I think something has to happen, because I think it becomes people having stayed home for all these months realize that, oh my God, I spent so much time traveling and
Yes.
doing all these things. So yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really interesting concept, and certainly can be done, right? You've got your live in-person audience, and then you've got a video wall, showing however many people, dozens, hundreds of people, attending virtually.
Exactly. And I see, maybe somebody managing the event, and you put your hand up and you get
Yeah.
pushed up to the front of the video wall and you can speak and talk. I mean, and the technology is here. I don't see why we shouldn't do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that'll be really interesting.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm really curious also for vendors in terms of how they're thinking about reaching out to
Yeah.
Potential customers, because this used to be one of the big watering holes for the industry to kind of come and spread the word, so to say.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess the feedback I got from different solution providers seemed to really be one extreme to the other. Either they all shared that traffic was off, from a normal show, and yet there were some solutions that were very happy with it. Many of them had worked to schedule meetings ahead of time with prospects, clients, etc. So they were very happy with what happened there. Then the other extreme were, those solution providers that I think were maybe just relying on whatever traffic, that were not as happy, that didn't feel, that they were getting as much out of it as maybe in the past.
Right. And I think, it was difficult to kind of anticipate exactly what was going to happen. And I think a lot of these, like the show floor, how it's designed, how it flows, I mean, all of that happens so much in advance.
Yes.
It's very difficult to change some of these things last minute, once you realize that, oh my God, I have it wrong. So.
Right. Yeah, no, that's right.
I think all in all, I was just glad to see people. I was just glad to, shake hands, sit and break bread
Yeah.
with people and meet familiar people.
No, I agree. So I know you spent some time over at Grocery Shop. What were your thoughts around that?
I think very similar. I mean, they had a pretty rigorous mechanism of getting people signed up, see their, negative tests, vaccination, all that was there. Of course, Grocery Shop was held in Mandalay Bay, which is a much bigger facility than Paris. So I definitely got my steps in. I got to say that without question.
So did I.
That's right. Yeah. And, but I think reactions were similar. I think at Grocery Shop, they really, try to innovate. They have these startup streets and startup cities. And I think some of that didn't attract quite the level of traffic that people had hoped for. And I think the way things were walled off, the reduced visibility was supposed to be a captive audience, but if nobody goes there, then you're just kind of isolated.
Yeah.
And I thought it was kind of thin on the technology too, honestly. I didn't quite see as many innovative companies as I would normally see but I gotta say, I attended a few sessions, including yours, Gary, and I thought the sessions were pretty decent.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the educational program at Grocery Shop was really good. A number of the sessions I saw seemed to be pretty well attended. I know the one that I did with Ron there from Weiss that I think you were in. It looked to be we pretty well filled the room, I think, that morning. So attendance across education sessions, I think, was good. And I agree with you, though. The exhibit floor at Grocery Shop seemed to be pretty quiet.
Yeah, it was pretty quiet, and again, I think you got to hand it to these guys. I mean, they're brave enough to even pull it off, attempt to pull it off. And then, an event of this size is certainly not easy to pull off, right? Or change last minute. But I think, it's probably going to make a lot of solution providers think about how are they going to reach their, what's their customer acquisition strategy, right?
Yes.
I would love to hear from people in terms of how they're altering that or what they think about it, because I mean, it seems like you're going to start investing in trying to do a direct outreach way more. And if solution providers do that, then it becomes a little challenging for retailers because they get inundated with more information.
Yes.
Right. And then now making a decision between them becomes a little difficult. Kind of how do you separate the signal from the noise? So we have this strange ecosystem that's evolving, and I guess there's got to be some solution that arrives out of that.
Yeah, it is. I agree. It's going to be interesting to see how this whole event space really evolves through this. I do think that there's an opportunity, as we were saying earlier, for that hybrid type event, and I wouldn't be surprised to see somebody really go after that aggressively. But the trade show piece of it is more challenging to do.
Yeah. I don't know if you remember, Gary, but several years ago, I think you and I, we were at Chicago for probably the last FMI event.
Yes.
That occurred, right? And you can kind of see it happening right in front of you.
Yeah. No, that's right. That's right. So, I think the next one that we're thinking about coming up here will probably be FMI midwinter.
Correct.
In January. It's going to be interesting. Now that's going to be down in Florida, which is pretty well opened up. So that could serve to attract a lot of people.
That is true.
As opposed to NRF in New York City, where you've got to have a vaccine passport to get into a restaurant.
Correct.
That may pose some constraints.
That is true. That is true. So it's interesting. I mean, I'm curious to see how it pans out. And I think maybe the objective at these events is going to change. I mean, before the objective was, I'm going to go out and meet a few new clients, but if your clients don't necessarily show up, then what are you there for? Right. So I think there's going to be an interesting shift that happens here, but, I think this clearly, more than ever, what we did see, Gary, is that retailers are looking for solutions. So there's no dearth of that. Absolutely. They're all, we could make out very clearly, they're all looking to figure out how to get on the digital bandwagon and do so many things, and we know that there's challenges happening that are coming up with supply chain. And I heard a lot of chatter about that, Gary. I don't know if you want to spend a couple of minutes talking about that, which is, everybody's talking about the supply chain crunch coming along.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm wondering how are retailers going to react to that this time, knowing that it's coming. I mean, last time it kind of came out of left field, but this time when you know, I'm wondering what people are doing. Have you heard about
So,
strategies?
yeah, and it is a concern. I mean, and it's being exacerbated by the shortage of workers, right? From the store back to the warehouse and distribution center, back to the truckers, all the way back through the supply chain. So not only is there difficulty getting product, you can't move the product. So a lot of challenges. I know different retailers I'm speaking with, and certainly the bigger regional guys that self-distribute, a number of them are stocking up as much as they can on key items. And, they've got the added challenge right now of not only the everyday staples, like toilet paper, paper towels, et cetera, but now the holiday items that people are going to want. So, yeah, that they've got some real challenges here.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting. I think I saw in the news the other day that a couple of the bigger national retailers are even leasing their own cargo ships,
Yes.
uh,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
really
Who
interesting.
was it? Costco or Target? One of them, I
Yeah, I
think.
thought Walmart was, and I think they're looking to just lease their entire cargo ships to move their merchandise.
Which I mean is almost unbelievable. I mean, we were hearing from somebody saying that a shipping container that in the past would, lease for maybe $800 for a trip was up to what, like 20,000 or
Yeah,
$24,000.
so some crazy number like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So making the next step to basically leasing the whole ship, I guess you can begin to understand, but even that doesn't solve the problem. As somebody was recently telling me that there are 40 or even 50 container ships off the coast of Long Beach, right, which California, which is one of
Waiting
the
to be offloaded. Right. Yeah.
yeah, waiting to be offloaded. There's not enough people, workers at the port to offload the ships.
Right, right. Yeah, I think we've talked about this in a couple of episodes about labor shortage and why it's happening and
Yeah.
what's happening. I think it's curious, and I think one of the things we did predict on the show is that that's going to actually drive more automation. It's going to drive growth of technology usage and how you can. Um, I hate to use the word substitute, but really supplant and complement, and to
Oh,
enhance your operations with technology and AI.
yeah.
Because of labor shortage, right?
Yeah. I mean, we're already seeing, I think I just saw a news item this morning, Cardenas is rolling out self-checkout or more self-checkout to like 50 stores. So there's a lot of self-checkout implementations going on. Trigo, the computer vision company like Amazon Go, just announced they signed a deal with Aldi. So I mean, stop and think about that.
Right.
Aldi, a low price, limited selection operator, must be comfortable with the economics of computer vision now. But I'm sure also what's driving it is, inability to fully staff the stores.
Yeah, and I saw robot delivery. I think ShopRite's kind of open, Wakefern's opened it up at a couple of stores in Pennsylvania, and they're going to have these little robots go around. They're actually going to be manned, kind of like a remote, almost
Yeah.
like drone pilots. They're going to be somebody sitting in some room and driving these things and going and delivering. So, I mean, I think it's a super exciting time. I think it's just interesting. I'm trying to figure out, what does events mean in this space now?
Yeah.
How do retailers find solutions, and how do solution providers acquire customers? I think it's just
Yeah.
fascinating time for that.
And I think the other side to that challenge is not only how do retailers, find solutions and these technologies and capabilities. I'm also seeing retailers, and again, of all sizes, not just the independent operators, really searching for help with understanding what's going on, what's coming next, what do I do?
Right, right. Yeah, I know. I think Google is not the answer for everything. You can go and search what you want, but there's just so much information. You need some way of separating the noise. And, and folks, what the story we're trying to do here is that we try to bring on innovative solutions. This is a piece of that puzzle, I think. I think shows like this bring on solutions, spark some ideas that you can reach out to, and so on and so forth. But Gary, it's going to be, I think we thought 2020 was an interesting year. I think 2021 was even more interesting. And I think 2022, we'll really see if the change has stuck, right? We'll see if some of the trends that started in 2020 and 2021 are actually here to stay, and people are going to do business differently. Yeah.
Yep. No, that's right.
Anyway, fascinating conversation here. So we're going to keep this episode short here, but we want to thank you guys again for listening and continuing to support us. And we've got some exciting guests lined up and some exciting conversations. And by the way, I did want to throw this out. We didn't want to put this out as a Retail Perch episode, but it's going to be available on the Retail Perch website. Gary and I did a short session for a share group, and some of that Q&A has been thrown together into a 20-minute video. I think there were some great questions, Gary, in that.
Yeah. Oh, there were.
This is mostly from independents and small chains, which you guys might relate to. So it's going to be available on the retailperch.com. So you can look out for it on our website. We're also going to be posting it on LinkedIn. And by the way, if you're listening to this, we do have our own LinkedIn page. So do follow us there to keep in touch with us. And otherwise, it's been great talking to you folks. We'll be back next week with a couple of interesting guests to keep the conversation going. Gary, any closing thoughts?
That's right. No, interesting times ahead.
Yep. Again, I want to thank Stephanie Doherty for putting this together. She is the magic behind the show. So thanks, Stephanie, and you guys stay safe, and we will talk to you soon. Make sure to join us every Monday and connect with us at the Retail Perch on Instagram and Facebook.
And if you have any questions, feel free to email us at theretailperch@birdseye.com.
Until next time, this is Shekar.
And this is Gary signing off.